Well, welcome. My name is David Couch, and it's my honor this year, 2015, to be the chairman of the Board of Supervisors. So it's also my honor to welcome you to the Board of Supervisors chambers. We have an important meeting for you tonight. We want to give you some, what we think is some important information. You know, preparedness is really the only way we can combat natural disasters. And we believe that we have the high likelihood of an El Nino coming this year, and we want you to be as prepared as possible. We've got 8 different agencies and departments here tonight. They're going to be helping you prepare for disaster, especially this possible El Nino. We'd like you to share what you learned tonight with your family and friends. We'd like you to go to our website if you'd like to view this again, and we'd like you to also check it out on KGOV. We're going to have you running it over and over and over again. While we've got the public's attention, while they're focused on El Nino, because you hear about it all the time in the news, we'd like to really give you as much information as we could while you're focused on that. I'm going to only introduce one person this evening, and then each individual speaker is going to introduce the next. My speaker, or the one I'm going to introduce, is somebody who's just going to tell us a little bit about what an El Nino actually is. His name is Gerald Meadows, and he's with the National Weather Service. Gerald, welcome.
Appreciate it. Again, my name is Gerald Meadows. I'm with the National Weather Service office in Hanford, which covers Kern County. I'm going to start off by saying El Nino in itself is not a storm. It is actually a change in weather pattern. So what David misspoke earlier saying that, if El Nino is coming, El Nino is here. And as a matter of fact, El Nino peaked in its strength last month and is actually going to start slowly decreasing in strength and amplitude, as it normally does this time of year in winter, throughout into the summer months, rather. The storm systems we've seen over the last couple months are generic winter storms in that they're coming from the northern jet stream and coming down out of the Gulf of Alaska, bringing us much needed rainfall. It may seem like much more rainfall than we've seen in the last 4 years, but they have actually had no influence from El Nino. El Nino actually hits off of a southern jet stream down around the equator and brings up much more warmer rainfall to us than our typical winter storms. We don't typically see too much snowpack and snow in general from El Nino type storms. However, the drought that I spoke about, that we're all been suffering for the last 4 years, has set up very unique conditions for us. The soils are very dry and they're lacking vegetation to trap the water that has come down. So that's why we've seen some of our detrimental flooding along the Interstate 5 and Highway 58 this year, back in October. And for that reason, the National Weather Service likes to remind everybody, turn around, don't drown. It only takes a second and a little bit of water to move. As the next speaker, introduce now, Craig Pope, it's over here, will be speaking about as far as, so Craig.
Good evening, Craig Pope, County Public Works Director, and I'm going to be trying to show a few slides that you can be seen up here, and if you need to relocate so you can see them, please do. Kern County normally gets 4 to 6 inches of rain, and we're talking about maybe double that, maybe 5 to, total 10 to 12 inches, another 5 inches more than normal. And what's the big deal with that? Why is it a problem? Haven't we been in a drought? As was just told to you, it's a unique set of circumstances that we've been in a drought, the soils are dry, we're going to get a lot more runoff. And we are all living on alluvial floodplain. We're surrounded by mountains. Everywhere you look on a clear day, you can see mountains except to the north of us. Over on the desert side, you can see mountains, big looming mountains, and the water runs off of those mountains. And it's running off at a higher rate than normal because it's been so dry and there's very little vegetation. And when it runs off, it doesn't just sheet down in a normal, plain everywhere. It collects in those gullies. You look up in the mountains, you see gullies, and they bring down a lot of mud with them. Those mountains aren't made out of solid rock. There's a lot of dirt there, and it comes down with a lot of mud. And that's what we saw, heavy mud flows up on Highway 58 and on I-5. So what happens to us here? Why is that a problem when it comes down? We have some problem areas, and the map here shows, it's kind of hard to see in this detail, but all those canyons that come down out of the hills all have a name. We know the big one, Kern River. It has a huge flood area that drops in, but it's also controlled by a dam, and that dam feeds out at a regulated rate. So it really isn't much of a problem to us. It has a very large area to soak in. It goes all the way across the valley over to the other side. The entire area is set aside for it to soak in. But ones that you don't know of very much, that you don't hear of very often, Pozo Creek, Tehachapi Creek, Walker Basin Creek, Caliente Creek, those areas get quite a bit of rain during an El Nino event, and they come out of the mountains and they don't have big areas to soak in. Kern River, we left big areas open for it to come into because it is the biggest one that we've seen. It used to flood the city of Bakersfield on a regular basis. Back in the 50s, or 1950 was the last big flood, and then the dam was completed in 53, and they've been able to control it since then. But with this, we have all these different areas that come out and it floods down to us. And the worst probably that we have that's happened where people live is out in the Lamont area, because there we have not only a Walker Basin Creek, not only a Caliente Creek, but a Tehachapi Creek, all come together in one spot, and it really does cause quite a bit of flooding. If you can see on the map there at all, there's a little area off on the east side there that instead of blue showing flood, it's kind of a brownish area, brownish yellow. That is an area that can get to 1 to 2 feet of water in it, and that's where Lamont Arvin area is. So we want to take a quick look at some of the problem areas we have. If you look on the map in there, it is the south end of the valley, and it shows some of the roads. The I-5, 99, they're pretty safe. They work okay, but we have like Copus Road, David Road, Wheeler Ridge Road. Those can get in the way of those streams because those streams come out of the hills, and the farmers have leveled them out and are farming, because most of the time, there's no water. There's not a problem. But when it gets an El Nino condition, there's enough water that it then looks for some place to go. And where does it go? It goes under the roads. Here's Copus Road. That's 7 miles, looks like a canal, but it's really one of our roads. And as a matter of fact, it looked like that this week. With a little bit of rain, we had about an inch of rain on those hills to the south there. It just fills up because it is now lower than the rest of its surrounding areas because mud flows come across it. This road is David Road, up in the southeast corner of the valley. This happened in, I think, 97 it did this. And the thing to be aware of, at night driving along, if that's full of water, you don't know what's under there. So we're going to ask, when you see things, if you're out driving at night and you can't tell where the road is, be very careful, because it could be that underneath it. This area is a Taft area, and it really is pretty good because it's on a gentle slope all the way across it, and it drains pretty well. There's a couple of spots on it, but one of the areas we have trouble with out is around the Taft area is collapsible soils. And what happens is the soil gets good and wet, and it just drops. Again, think if you're driving at night, there's no lights out there. If there's water on the road, you don't know it. So just be extra careful driving in the weather conditions. The Lamont area is one of our worst areas. Not only are there people there, there's I think about 25,000 people live in the area. It is one of the 3 creeks come together there, and it really can flood pretty hard. I've seen it, and when I was back in 1983 when it flooded, the last really big El Nino we had, it got wet. I was out on Main Street and there was 2 foot of water on it. And these aerial photographs are from that time frame. And you can see the roads become rivers. So when we do have to evacuate, should we have to evacuate something like Lamont, we're asking, please do so when asked. It's not that you're going to get washed away, but when the water gets more than 4 or 6 inches deep, cars don't work very well. And we're going to ask you to come out and get out at that point. Your emergency services people will be guiding you through that, the sheriff, fire. But it's time to get out when we say it, because if you wait for when it gets up to be 1 or 2 feet deep, it's really hard. Cars don't work so well anymore. More pictures of it when it flooded in '83. The canal there at the bottom edge of the page, East Side Canal, it fills up and it breaks out somewhere. And that's one of our challenges is we don't know where it's going to break out. And when it does, there's a lot of water, as you can see in these photos. And this picture right here, you say, oh, well, that was in '83. This picture was in July of this year, because that water that comes out of those hills brings with it a lot of mud. And the roads turn to creeks, and those creeks have a lot of mud in them. And so when the car trying to go down it gets stranded, stuck, good luck, then it's just more work for us. Panama Road, we know it turns into a stream. And we have a system there where we put up barricades like this. We shoot the water off into some sumps, and the goal there is to drop the mud out of it, get the soil out of it, because then we can pass it through pipes, get it to the other side of town, and water is far easier to handle than mud is. And so that's what the purpose of this system is, but it's only good for about 10,000 CFS, and a really big flow, it'll be double that or triple that. Lake Isabella area, there's just a couple areas up there, but the interesting thing to note here is there is a dam. It is controlled. The South Fork, North Fork, that's where the mud drops out. The water comes in at the South Fork, North Fork. A lot of the mud drops. It gets into the dam. Water comes down the canyon. It's much easier to handle water, and you let it percolate into the soil down in the valley. But we have our own problems up in that area. This one was Sierra Highway, and that took us about 1.5 years to fix. This is Lake Isabella Boulevard. And I think the emphasis of this picture is that, again, in these conditions, it's not just water coming out of the hills, it's debris, it's trees, it's roots, it's mud. So it overwhelms the pipes. We spend a lot of time trying to keep the pipes clean so the water flows through them. But if there's a tree limb or a tree trunk in the way, they do get plugged up, and then that's when we start getting floods like this. Fraser Park, as in the picture here, you can see mountains on either side, north and south of it, and then a little piece down the bottom, which is Fraser Park. The trick here is you got a community down in a flood zone. And so it does come out of those hills, and it does cross the roads on either side of Fraser Park. So Fraser Park at times gets cut off, where the roads close on both sides of it. And so that's a real challenge for emergency services to get into, to help them out, for the people just to get out and get normal supplies. So Fraser Park, you have to be extra prepared and think that you may be cut off for several days. This is the north part of the county. This is one that a lot of people don't fully realize. This is Pozo Creek area. And you don't hear of Pozo Creek very much. It's like, what is it? That area around Delano, Wasco, Shafter can go underwater. And it'll be, 10 miles by 10 miles square, 6 or 8 inches deep. And it's actually fairly clear at that point because mud has dropped out of it. But until you see it, you just don't really even believe it happens. But I've been up on that road, Garces Highway, and realized no matter which direction I looked for 7 miles, it was water. And we were in a big truck and could do it. We could see the center line of the road. We were traveling slowly. The road was closed, but we were out seeing what damage had occurred. And there's just water. It's incredible how much water comes down out of these creeks. This is what we spend a lot of time doing. It's trying to keep the floodways open. This happens to be on Famoso Road, and it's just showing that we are constantly trying to keep the water moving, because water, it's going to find its way to the bottom. We can't stop it. We can't stop the rain. We can't stop the water coming down. But what we can try and do is facilitate the movement of it through the areas so that it doesn't pile up. If it gets deep, that's where we have a problem. That's where damage starts really occurring. So here we're just an example of that happening. This is the Caliente Creek area, I think. Oh no, this is over in the east side. This is the Jawbone. Jawbone, this is the east side over in the desert, and Highway 14, Red Rock Canyon Road, and those areas out there, you hear of flash floods in the desert. It really does happen. That Red Rock Creek, I don't think it really has a name yet, or truly a name. It's dry all the time. You can drive over and go, why do we have this bridge that's 200 feet long and probably 15 or 20 feet down to the bottom? Because it's dry. That creek has overtopped that bridge at times. It gets a good flood going through there, and it fills it up and overtops. So it's amazing how much water comes down out of there. And those roads, again, they're they're on the edge of the bottom of a big mountain, and the water just comes down out of it. There's nothing we can do. It gets closed off. We clean it up, though. Caliente Creek is, leads to a couple small communities up in the mountains, but the trick on it is, again, it's in the bottom of a V, where we try and fit a road down at the bottom, but there's also a creek in the bottom, and that's just a tight fit. When the water starts flowing, the road disappears. I'm the county, and I don't get into the cities that much, but we have a few facilities that are in the metro area, and the facilities we worry about are where you go down and under railroad crossings, because those have pumps in them. They pump the water out as it comes in. Some of them are actual drainage into sumps, but most of them are pumps. Well, sometimes those pumps stop. You get a good storm going, no electricity, pump stops, water starts building up. Just be careful, again, driving at night, coming along and think you can just run through that water. Maybe not. That's where we've had a number of accidents. Most of those circles there are that. There's a couple locations there where they're just low areas where, for whatever reason, they just water ponds up. And again, it'll stay out that way for about a week. With that, I'll conclude, but just a thought for you is, we've done this before. It comes down, we can't stop it, we facilitate it through. We got 2 years of work to clean it up, but we get it cleaned up. That's our job, and we have emergency services that'll talk about what they do during an actual event. With that, I'll have our fire chief, Brian Marshall, come up and give a few words.
Thanks, Craig. So I wear many different hats here in the county. Not only am I the fire chief, but I'm also the director of emergency services and the operational area coordinator for fire and rescue assets. So what that means is I've been actively involved in this El Nino preparation, both at the county level, the region level, the state level. And the reason we're doing this is we want you prepared so you survive El Nino. But I need to take a step back, because here in Kern County, here in California, we face numerous threats from natural disasters. Earthquake is one of the most disaster that we tend to think that's going to happen. But we have wildland fires. We have regular flooding during regular monsoonal events or winter events. We have the opportunity to have some of the most extreme weather, whether it be extreme heat or extreme cold like we're facing right now, which is causing damage across the county. What about a major power outage where our power was out for several days? These type of disasters we face constantly, and we want you to be prepared to deal with them. And this El Nino has actually engaged our community, our citizens, to be prepared. And now my challenge to you is continue with that preparedness and make sure that you're ready for earthquakes, wildland fires, power outages, extreme heat, cold, earthquakes, thunderstorms, dust storms, all of these events that could impact you and your family's lives. So what have we been doing across the county to be ready for El Nino? As I said, I'm the operational area coordinator, and we have had an operational area meeting. That means everybody across the county, whether it be cities, PG&E, Southern Cal Edison, Southern Cal Gas, the military bases, police chief, public works, CHP, all these different agencies came together one morning and spent the morning talking about how we would respond countywide to an El Nino event. Because remember, El Nino, these type of flooding events are not going to stop at jurisdictional boundaries. They know no boundaries. The entire county is going to be affected. Now, as these storms come up, we know when they're coming. And we have agreed as an operational area that we're going to get together prior to the storm arriving and make sure that we're ready, that key personnel know that they may be called back to work at midnight to respond and deal with the emergency at hand. But we're ready. We've been talking, and there could be assets moving out of metropolitan Bakersfield to East Kern if that's where the flooding's occurring, and vice versa. Again, this El Nino event this winter knows no jurisdictional boundary, so we all have to work together. Now, California has one of the most robust statewide master mutual aid plans for these type of disasters. In fact, you see every summer wildland fires throughout the state and fire trucks moving up and down the highway as we combat these wildland fires. Well, that same type of action will occur during El Nino events. Now, our closest help is in Southern California. But remember, these storms come up through Mexico into Southern California before they even reach Kern. That means that Southern California will be engaged in their emergency response before the storm even gets to us. So our help in the event that we have wide-scale, massive flooding and we need additional assistance is going to come from Northern California. And as it impacts Kern County and maybe into Tulare and Fresno County, our help may be coming from the Sacramento area. So that gives you a time frame before we can even get help to our first responders here into Kern County, which means help to you. So you need to be prepared. We've put on the county's website and the Kern County Fire Department's website an El Nino page. There's a lot of good reference information. There's links to other websites that will help you be prepared. Because it's up to you. There's not enough firefighters. There's not enough deputy sheriffs. There's not enough first responders to be at everybody's house. You have to be prepared so we can take care of people who are truly in need of our first responder help. So we're counting on you to go to our website and get that key information. Make sure you have drinking water. Make sure you have food. If you have canned food, make sure you have a can opener that you don't have to plug in because the power may be out. There's other considerations. At night, if you light candles, we want you to be fire safe. Make sure those candles are not next to flammable curtains and such. If you have a generator, don't bring it inside. That can kill you. So all of these tips are available on our website, kerncountyfire.org. There's another part of this that we often forget, and that is our family pets. You need to have dog food, cat food, whatever type of pet you have, you need to have food and drinking water for that animal. Because remember, this event could last several days. And with these El Nino predictions, it's not just one storm and it's going to be over. These are going to be multiple storms over the winter. So you need to have your kit that includes your pet. Medicines, whatever you need for your pet. Babies, if you have a baby, the baby food, warm blankets, whatever you need. Be prepared. Sandbags. That's one of the hottest topics that we face right now. I can tell you, at every Kern County fire station, we have sandbags, and we have sandbags strategically placed throughout the county. The Kern County Fire Department headquarters has sand and sandbags available 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, so you can come by and be prepared. Now, these sandbags that we're handing out is to help keep the water out of your house. Put them across your front door, your back door, your garage. You don't need to build a fortress around your house. We're trying to keep the water out of your house so you don't end up with flood damage. And speaking of flood damage, your regular insurance does not pay for flood damage. You need to go and get specific flood damage that will cover your property should damage from El Nino occur. And again, you know from the maps that were just shown by Public Works that your house may be in a flood area. Go get flood insurance. Takes 30 days to kick in. El Nino's coming. Be prepared. So speaking of sandbags, this Saturday, we're going to have Sandbag Saturday across Kern County. Firefighters will be out in force. We have locations throughout the county where we've had sand delivered. We're going to have firefighters there. We're going to have the community emergency response teams. We're all going to be throughout the county to make sure you're prepared. Come by one of those sites on our fire department website. It'll be on the news media. You can come and you can get sand and sandbags to prepare your house. And then we're going to slowly transition from this preparedness mode to the response mode. Because your first responders, we need to get ready. We need to make sure that when these storms happen, that we have our assets strategically placed so we can respond quickly. We need to be prepared also. So we will be handing out sandbags this Saturday. We encourage you to come to the locations and get the sandbags you need to protect your property. Now, one thing that's already been mentioned, and I want to stress it again, turn around, don't drown. When these storms come, you're going to know what's happening. You need to be in a proactive response mode yourself. Now, we're going to give you information. We have a county-wide system called Ready Kern. You can register for Ready Kern on the county's website. As areas begin to get impacted, we will launch emergency information to you telling you what to do. Whether it's to shelter in place in your house, or maybe to evacuate to an evacuation site, but we're going to give you information. Listen to that information and do what we tell you to do. Because we're not going to wait till it's flooding. We're going to give you information early enough where you can survive. But if you do get caught in a flash flood, turn around, don't drown. Remember, this isn't clean river water. This water is going to have mud. This water is going to have boulders. This water is going to have trees. It's going to have trash. And I guarantee you, it will knock you down and you will drown. Now, one key thing I want to stress with our Ready Kern system, listen to the entire message. It's going to give you all the information you need. And it's not going to be a long message because we have to get the information out. But at the end of the message, make sure you acknowledge that you received this message. Because when you acknowledge that you received this message, our first responders, primarily the sheriff's department, they're going to be able to look at that and know you got the message and know you got out. Because if we don't get an acknowledgement from you, your sheriff's department, your police department, your law enforcement agencies, they're going to have to go to your home and make sure you evacuated. And if you evacuated and didn't acknowledge the message, then that's just somebody else that they're not able to serve. And remember, we're going to be in response mode. Everything needs to happen quickly. If you're directed to a shelter, remember that animal services will have animal kennels available for your pets. Don't leave your pets at home. We want to make sure your pets are safe too. This is truly a team effort across the county. As I mentioned, sandbags. One of the things the county has put as a priority is, again, to make sure we're able to respond to these emergencies. Through some FEMA grants, we are able to purchase sandbag machines. We have one large sandbag machine that will be going to the Kern County Sheriff's Department, that they will be able to build sandbags rapidly. And then we'll have several portable sandbag machines that we can send out to our trouble areas. so we can quickly build sandbags. I can also tell you there is 4 semi-trailers full of sandbags right now, ready to go, that we can deploy to a site that's seeing flooding. But remember, if we have massive flooding throughout the county, it's only 4 sandbag trailers. You need to be prepared. Again, I want to stress that El Nino will come and go, but you need to be ready for any type of disaster. I'm encouraging you to take this El Nino event and continue with your disaster preparedness, your family plan. Make sure you're ready, because at the end of the day, it makes our job so much easier when you're prepared, and it really does save your life. At this time, I'd like to introduce Commander Tyson Davis of the Kern County Sheriff's Department.
Good evening. Thank you, Chief Marshal. It was a very thorough presentation. He covered everything. Just to follow up to what he said, the Sheriff's Office management's been actively involved in these meetings with the other county departments and making sure that we're prepared for any type of emergency incident that comes our way. We've had flooding in the past. You know, recently we had the floods with the mudslides on 58 and I-5 that tied up the highways for several days, and that involved a tremendous amount of resources. Something to think about with the El Nino season is when the flooding starts, everybody's going to be responding. All of the public safety is going to be responding. And so our priority is going to be life-saving efforts. And we're not going to be able to respond to calls where water's damaging a home and there's just property damage. We're going to be focusing on the life-saving efforts and getting people out to safety. One of the biggest things I can recommend is that you be aware of what's going on in your community. You pay attention to the news. Pay attention, as Chief Marshal mentioned, pay attention to the information they're going to be putting out through Ready Kern. And something that we started at the Sheriff's Office back in June of this year is a messaging system called Nixle. And it's a social media messaging system that you can opt into on your smartphone. You text 888-777, and you'll get updates from the Sheriff's Office as we put out information. All of our news releases that we put out about crime, about public safety, crime prevention, they'll all go directly to your phone. So you'll no longer have to wait for the information to go through other news sources. You can actually get it directly to your phone in real time. Again, that's 888-777. And so when the emergency occurs, we'll be putting information out in that manner as well as Ready Kern. I would recommend logging in and signing up for both systems. They're both very good systems. But to follow up on earlier, follow the information that we give you. If we tell you to avoid a certain area, avoid that area. If you see road signs or barricades or flares or some sort of public safety official out there directing traffic, don't try and drive around them. Follow what they're saying, follow the road signs, and work with us. We're going to try and set things up so that people can get to safe areas. Some other things that you need to be aware of are that, as Chief Marshal mentioned earlier about animals. If you call the Sheriff's Department because your animals are stranded, we're not going to be able to respond and help with animals, property, or anything in that nature. We're going to be focused on life-saving efforts of human beings. As far as preparation, the Sheriff's Office has off-road vehicles staged at each of our stations so that we can get around in the water and the mud, as was mentioned earlier about when it starts flooding. Many vehicles can't get through the flooding. We have some vehicles that we can get around in. We've also made our deputies familiar with the areas that are most common to flooding. We have maps of the areas at each station, and we have a department operations center that will be standing up, and our management team is all aware that when the flooding happens and the department operations center is ready to be stood up, they know that they have to come in and work. So we have people that are on call and ready to respond. And lastly, I would just say that being prepared for all events ahead of the emergency is probably the best option. The sandbags, getting those ahead of time, whether you need them or not, it's a smart thing to do. And now I will turn it over to Captain Paul Medeiros with the CHP.
Thank you, Commander. I'm Commander Paul Medeiros from the Bakersfield, California Highway Patrol Office. We patrol the Bakersfield unincorporated areas, including the freeways and highways, including the Lake Isabella area. Recently, as you know, we've had some significant flooding on the 58, which I was at personally. The I-5 near the Gorman or Grapevine area, that floods, or we have snowstorms regularly, and motorists get stranded for hours, if not days. And we do our best to respond, and I can tell you that you're in good hands with your government officials and government agencies. We work cooperatively together to get you out of these emergency situations, but we need your help as well. You need to be informed. You need to listen to the radio. You need to watch television. If you have a smartphone, use it. Find out what roads are open. If you see something that doesn't look right, a freeway that's dipping, as was mentioned earlier, those roadways, at the bottom, there's a pump. And in an emergency situation, they lose electricity and it becomes flooded. 6 to 8 inches of water and your car hits it, it's going to come to a stop, and then you're stranded. And what we noticed just recently is people were in the mudslides, and the mud was not just clear water, it had a bunch of debris. And after that water left, it was nearly like cement. You could not get the vehicles out. And people didn't want to leave their vehicles, but we had to get them away from the vehicles so we can get the tow trucks in and get them out. Please be prepared. Have some bottled water, some sealed foods, a coat. Because fortunately it wasn't raining shortly thereafter, but if it continues to rain, you're going to be stuck out there. We need you to make notification as to when these floodings are occurring if you see it. But when that occurs, we literally get hundreds of phone calls for our dispatchers and the communication centers to answer, and they are bombarded. In emergency, please call 911. If you're asking or just have a question regarding, hey, is this road open? 911 is not the number. I'm going to give you a number. It's 800-427-7623, and the last 4 spells road. So it's 800-427-ROAD. And that is a Caltrans, California Department of Transportation. They maintain the roadways, and they know what roads are open or closed. You can punch in what freeway or highway you're trying to enter, and they'll tell you if it's open or closed. If you use 911, that's just one additional caller that they may not have the information to, that's going to bombard and perhaps prevent a true emergency from getting through. So we ask you to be prepared. If you see something doesn't look right, slow down, perhaps don't enter it. If you're asked to leave, please cooperate with law enforcement and government officials, and we're doing it for your safety. We know it's inconvenient, but we need your assistance to get the job done. As officers, we patrol the roadways. As soon as we see it rain, we have our officers patrolling, and then we try to make notification to our emergency notification tactical alert center, which sends out messages, and we try to get vehicles in place so you don't enter the roadway, but we cannot put an officer at every corner, at every freeway to prevent you. So we do need your assistance with notification, but then we need your cooperation when the emergency's there. And again, be prepared, be informed, have your equipment with you in your car, a coat, water, and hopefully everything will work out through this El Nino season. Thank you. Now I'd like to bring up Esperanza Contreras from CAP K211.
Hello, my name is Esperanza, and I'm the program manager for 211 Kern. 211 Kern is an information and referral program, and we provide resources to the Kern County residents. During a disaster, when Ready Kern is activated, 211 Kern takes the calls to provide the information to its residents. Ready Kern sends 211 Kern the information that is going to be sent out to the residents. That way we can have it ahead of time, so when we receive your calls, we'll provide you with the information. 211 Kern has the information on road closures and evacuation sites. We also have the information for the sandbags that are being dispersed throughout the county. So if you would like some information or you're not quite sure where to go for that, you can call 211 Kern. We work very closely with our community partners to make sure we have up-to-date information. You can sign up for Ready Kern at readykern.com, going to our Kern Fire Department to sign up, or you can call 211. If your phone does not allow you to dial 211, we do have a 1-800 number, and that 1-800 number is 1-800-273-2275. You can let the information and referral specialist who answers your call know that you would like to sign up for Ready Kern, and they'll take your information, and we will forward that information to the Office of Emergency Services. You can contact Ready Kern by, 211 Kern by calling us at 211, or you can go to our website at capk.org. 211 Kern is a 24-hour service, and we are open 7 days a week. Our staff is bilingual, and if there's a language that's not spoken by our specialists, we do offer translation services. So we do have a service that will translate. I would like to go ahead and call Megan Hughes from the American Red Cross.
Thank you, Esperanza. My name is Megan Hughes, and I'm the volunteer counterpart to the Disaster Program Manager for the American Red Cross here in Kern County. I'd like to start out tonight by telling you just a little bit about what the Red Cross does. In essence, the Red Cross is chartered by Congress to provide mass care in times of disaster. Well, what does that mean during the upcoming El Nino season? It means if our government, if there's a large event that happens here, a large flooding event that happens in Kern County, our government partners are going to call us and ask us to open a shelter. And at the shelter, you'll find a warm place to stay. We're going to feed you, and we're going to provide you snacks. We're going to have access to a disaster health and mental health folks, so if you had to leave your home quickly without any medications, we can help you get those replaced. And then we're going to help you transition back into the recovery phase of your life. We're going to work with some of our community partners, Salvation Army, Goodwill, Kern County Animal Control. They're going to set up a shelter for your pets as well, if you need to leave your home with your pets. Sorry. Now, let's just say, for example, what happens if it rains during El Nino, but it's not a large enough flooding event for us to open a shelter? Let's say your individual home gets flooded. What then? Well, the American Red Cross is still going to be there for you. Okay? We have disaster responders that respond 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year to disasters. The number one thing that we respond to, in fact, is home fires, and we've already assisted 318 clients in Kern County since July 1st. So we're going to come out to your home, we're going to check out the damage, and again, we're going to provide you with some resources to make sure you have a safe place to stay and food, and help replace some of the items that you may have lost in the flooding. What we're doing here in Kern County to prepare for El Nino, well, we have about 80 different locations here in Kern County where we can open up a shelter. We're going through each one of those shelter locations, verifying the information that we have, making sure that we have supplies stocked. We have 7 different shelter trailers here throughout the county that has emergency supplies, and we're actually bringing another shelter up from Los Angeles County to help fortify our resources here. We're also conducting some additional El Nino training throughout the county, especially in our outlying areas, Fraser Park, Tehachapi, Kern River Valley. We already know because of the rains this year that these locations are going to be impacted. We've already opened up 8 shelters since July 1st because of the mudslides, especially on the 58 and up near Fraser Park. So we're doing extra training in these areas to make sure we have a solid volunteer base so we can staff these shelters when we open. What we're asking you to do. At the Red Cross, we have a saying. It's called Be Red Cross Ready. What does that mean? Get a kit, make a plan, be informed. Okay? Like the chief said, you're going to want to have an emergency kit. And in that kit, you're going to want to have at least 3 days worth of food and water for you and your families and your pets. Okay? You're going to want to have any medicines stored that you might need in an emergency situation if, for example, the pharmacy is closed and you can't get your medicines. If you're going to come to a shelter, you might bring some comfort items, like if you have kids, you might want to bring a teddy bear or some games for them. Okay? If you have a business, you might want to have a plan for your business as well. Okay? Make a plan. You're going to want to have an evacuation plan, and that means in the event of a home fire, you're going to want to make sure you get out of your home safely. In the event of a flood, you're going to want to make sure you know which roads are safe to travel to a shelter or other place of safety. Okay, you're going to want to need a communication plan. If your family is separated, if one of you is at home and another is at work, you're going to want a communication plan. How are you going to get in touch with each other? Okay, if your kids are at school, what's the plan going to be for them? Okay, oftentimes in the time of an emergency, the phone lines get jammed up a little bit. And so if you have trouble getting through, it's always a good idea to have family out of the area, because oftentimes it's easier to call a family member or a friend out of the area instead of calling someone locally. So identify all these things ahead of time, okay? And again, as the chief said, protect your property, flood insurance, make use of the sandbags that the fire department is making available to us. And finally, be informed, okay? Know the resources are around you. Get a radio, especially one that has access to National Weather Service and NOAA information. Make use of Ready Kern. Okay, the Red Cross also has some emergency apps that are free of charge and available on any platform. If you're going to remember two of them, there's one that's called an emergency. It has a little exclamation point as an icon. It's available for either phone, and it has preparedness information for earthquakes, wildfires, floods, tornadoes, hurricanes. Okay, and in this app, it's also going to tell you if we open a Red Cross shelter, it's going to tell you the location of that shelter. And in conclusion, the last thing I'd like to say is that for the Red Cross, people are our most valuable asset. And I would encourage you all to consider being a Red Cross volunteer. Okay? Other than that, the Red Cross is available to you in the case of an emergency 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The easiest way to get a hold of us, 1-800-RED-CROSS. Up next, Donna Fenton, Director, Kern County Environmental Health.
Again, I'm Donna Fenton with Kern County Public Health Environmental Health Division, and I'm here to tell you how to stay healthy during a flood emergency. So I'm going to have to repeat some of what's been said before. You've already heard about having your bag prepared. Don't wait. If you wait until the emergency, it's too late. You're not going to be running around trying to get those items together. So call it your go bag. If you have to evacuate quickly, it's there where you need it, when you need it. In that, you want to have your important documents, medical information, and medications. Again, it was said, if the roads are closed, you can't get to the pharmacy, that's not the time. Talk to your physician now about keeping some medicines that are necessary for you to have and take, enough to last you several days in your go bag. And then seal them in a watertight container so that if they do get wet, it doesn't ruin your medication. Also, you want to store that high enough that if your house was, did get flooded, it's not going to affect your go bag. So look where you're going to store it in a great place that it wouldn't get wet. Response time for ambulance and emergency medical aid may also be delayed due to those road closures. So this is not a time that you want to be without those medications if you need to take them, because the response may take a while just to get help. One of the other things we want to stress is that flood water is not just clean, pure rainwater. There's all sorts of things that flood water, as it can carry. Raw sewage contamination, gasoline, pesticides, fertilizers. It's very tempting for children and pets to go and play in water. You want to keep them out of that water. It's not safe for several reasons, because it can carry bacteria, viruses, other infectious organisms, but there could also be things hidden under that water that are sharp and could cause injury. So just keep your children and pets out of the water. Something as simple as just washing your hands thoroughly after contact with flood water can keep you from getting sick. You want to make sure as you're cleaning up your yard, your home, if it's been contaminated with flood water, that you're washing your hands frequently, especially before you go to prepare a meal. You also want to sanitize, disinfect anything that has come in contact with it that you're going to use again, especially children's toys that have been out in the yard, or the kids are going to go back out there and play. You want to make sure that you disinfect them. It can be done very easily using household bleach. A cup of bleach per a gallon of water will disinfect those toys and those belongings that you have that may have gotten contaminated. When you start to clean up, another thing to think about is make sure you wear protective clothing. Wear gloves, boots, long sleeves. If you do have any open sores or burns, you want to have waterproof bandages and gloves or other protective clothing covering it. And again, watch for sharp items that may be hidden under the floodwaters. And if you do get cut, cleanse that wound immediately. You want to make sure that none of that bacteria that may be in the water gets in the wound and it'll get infected. You may also need a tetanus shot if you haven't had one recently, so it could be recommended by your healthcare provider. You might want to seek medical attention. The other thing that you want to watch out for after a flood event is mold. The water gets in, and if it's in your home, in your carpeting, on the walls, it can easily cause mold to build up. And a lot of people have health conditions that are triggered by mold growth. It can trigger asthma and other things. So you want to make sure that you dry out your home as soon as possible after a flood event. Do not use fans in standing water. That's one of the ways you want to dry things out. But if there's still water, you don't want to have it plugged in. And also, if you're using a generator, you want to make sure, again, that it's outdoors, that you don't bring the generator indoors. I'm repeating this one again. You want to have extra water on hand, always, for any type of emergency. Public and private water supplies may become contaminated by floodwaters. If floodwaters infiltrate them, then it will not be drinkable. You may get a boil water notice from your water company. If you're on a private well, you should disinfect and have the water tested before you use it. So make sure you have plenty of bottled water to use until you know for sure that your drinking water is safe. Food. You want to discard any food products that have come in contact with floodwaters. Again, for those reasons I said, it could have bacteria or viruses. You don't want that transferred onto that loaf of bread and then you get sick by consuming it. Cans and bottled items that have not been opened and have not and are sealed tightly can be used. You just want to make sure that you sanitize the tops and the opening so that it's not transferred as you're pouring the contents out. If the power does go out, keep the refrigerator doors closed as much as possible. That will help retain temperature in your refrigerator to keep your foods from spoiling. My motto is always, when in doubt, throw it out. You don't want to take a chance. Last thing you need after your home has been flooded is to become sick from a foodborne illness because your temperature in your refrigerator was out. If you do develop symptoms of vomiting and diarrhea after floodwater exposure, you will want to seek medical attention if the symptoms are severe or persist. It may mean that you did get one of those waterborne illnesses I was referring to. If you're on a septic system, septic systems may fail during flooding events. Components of the systems may have been damaged by the floodwater, or the leaching areas may just be saturated. So you're going to want to minimize how much water you're putting through the drains. So allow as little water as possible to drain during that time until it has a chance to recover. And you may have to have somebody come out and take a look at it. So finally, if you do have any questions about protecting your health during a flood event, you can call us for information. Our phone number is 661-321-3000, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. And now, Steve Gabitas, who is the Public Information Officer for Kern County, will wrap this up for us.
Hello, thank you all for being here. You know, the stuff that we learned is very important, and it's valuable if we do something with it. We could learn everything that they said and remember it all, but if we don't do anything about it, and it starts raining, it's too late to get prepared. Once the raindrops are coming down, that's the finish line. If you don't have it done then, it's too late. So now's when you start the race. You get it all done before it starts raining. The program that we've tape recorded tonight will be available on our website, the Kern County website. It will also be shown on KGov repeatedly over the next few months. So that resource will be available to you, as well as the the fire department's webpage that has El Nino preparedness items there. Take what you've heard, mention the website to friends, family members. It's important that this information, that everybody's prepared. That'll reduce the demand on our emergency responders, the more people that are prepared.